All right, hello everyone. I'm Sean Daley. I'm going to get us started off today, and I also have my research partner Christine Daley with me, and two colleagues of mine, River Gunville and Jordyn Gunville. We are going to kind of lead this discussion today of the missing and murdered Indigenous women's movement. But before we get started, we're going to do something that's normally done when you talk about something like this. We're going to have a tribal elder from Cheyenne River, South Dakota, start us off with a prayer. Trini Bird Necklace is gonna get us started. So Jordyn, when Trini's ready, that'd be great. All right, thank you, Trini. All right, let me get to where we need to be. All right, can you guys see that? Okay, thank you. All right, so the four of us are from the new Institute for Indigenous Studies here at Lehigh University. I have to put out there the disclaimer that pending final approval, because it still has to make its way through a couple committees, but we are on our way. And we also are involved, the four of us, with a national not-for-profit called the American Indian Health Research and Education Alliance. And I do need to put out there as we get going, I need to remind all of you that this is being recorded by the university and that it will be posted at its conclusion on the Family Week website. All right. So the missing, murdered, and murdered Indigenous women's and girls movement is a relatively recent movement designed to bring attention to the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in North America. Throughout the United States and Canada, a disproportionate amount of Native women and girls go either missing and or murdered every year. Because of poor record keeping, unreported cases, cases not being investigated, a lack of media attention, the exact number of girls and women who go missing every year is actually not known. However, there are a few things we do know at this point. One of which is that more than 4 out of 5, or approximately 84% of American Indian and Alaska Native women and girls will experience violence, including physical and sexual violence, at the hands of an intimate partner during their lifetime. More than half of American Indian and Alaska Native women, about 56%, will experience sexual violence in their lifetime. Almost half of American Indian and Alaska Native women and girls, about 49%, have been stalked during their lifetime. In 2008, the US Department of Justice found that Native women and girls living on certain reservations and tribal lands in the US were being murdered at 10 times the US national average. According to the FBI, Native people as a whole, both male and female, disappear at about twice the rate of white Americans. What you're seeing on the side of the slides, you'll see through the presentation, are actual flyers we got off online, different social media sites of missing Native women. If you go north to Canada, Indigenous women there and girls go missing at about 12 times the average of any other racial or ethnic group in Canada. Unlike other racial and ethnic groups where perpetrators of crimes are usually from the same community or the same racial or ethnic group, Indian and Alaska Native women and girls are usually assaulted by non-natives. According to the South Dakota News Service, in the US, 2/3 of assaults and rapes committed against Native women and girls are committed by non-natives. And based on a 2019 article in the Arizona Daily Star, based on info they got from a US Justice report, 96% of Native sexual violence in their lifetime will have a non-native perpetrator. Amanda Dakota Webster was a 26-year-old Navajo woman from Cameron, Arizona, out on the Navajo Res. She was murdered on December 1st, 2018 in Florence, Kentucky at an extended stay hotel. She was working with a road construction crew on a project in Florence. She was stabbed to death by a white male, Jesse James, who was also staying at the hotel. If I'm remembering correctly, they found her body hid under her bed a day or two later. She was basically killed and hid under her bed. According to the National Crime Information Center, over 5,700 American Indian and Alaska Native women and girls were reported missing in 2016 alone. However, only 116 were reported to US Department of Justice. The numbers of missing women, Native women and girls are likely higher because not all of them are being reported. Often, missing Indigenous women and girls go unnoticed by pretty much everyone other than their family and friends. Numerous factors contribute to the high numbers of missing Indigenous women and girls, including a lack of resources on tribal lands, poor relationships between Native communities and non-Native law enforcement agencies in the surrounding communities, poor record keeping by law enforcement and governmental agencies, underreporting by law enforcement and governmental agencies, misidentifying missing Indigenous women and girls as white, Black, Hispanic, or Asian, racism. You'll often hear people say things like, she's probably just drunk, sleeping it off somewhere. And definitely sexism. You'll often hear people say, well, you know how Indian women are. The overt sexualization of Native women by businesses, corporations, Hollywood, and the media, both historically and presently, have led to certain assumptions about Native women. And just as a side note, if you're not familiar with the true story of Pocahontas, we don't know the exact date, but age she was about 9 to 12 years old when the whole story went down with John Rolfe. She did not look anything like the Disney character. Also of particular concern is natural resource extraction, particularly oil, and the associated man camps. If you're not familiar with man camps, they are dormitories and associated services set up by resource extraction companies where the workers, who are primarily male, live while they're working. The rates of alcohol use, drug use, and prostitution are exceptionally high at man camps, as is violence. Based on a 2019 study conducted by the US Department of Justice, the areas in and around the man camps of the Bakken oil producing regions of Montana and North Dakota, since the camps have been set up, have seen a 70% increase in the rate of victimization, particularly of aggravated assault. However, there was no corresponding rise in violent crime in the counties outside the oil region. A 30% increase in the rates of serious violent victimization, homicide, non-negligent manslaughter, rape and assault, robbery, and aggravated assault in the Bakken region, yet it declined 4% in the non-Bakken region. A 53% increase of violent victimization by strangers in the Bakken region. The violent victimization rate of Native Americans was 2.5 times higher than that for whites. And Native women saw a 54% increase in the rate of unlawful sexual contact, which is due primarily to reports of statutory rape. In most cases, non-native perpetrators are not prosecuted because native tribes and the nations do not have jurisdiction over non-natives on tribal lands. This goes back to 5 law called the Majors Crimes Act, which is still in effect today. Jurisdiction over non-natives generally falls to local, state, and federal authorities. Between 2005 and 2009, prosecutors in the US declined to bring charges against non-natives in 67% of cases that involve sexual abuse, sexual assault, and related matters on tribal lands. Savannah LaFontaine Graywind was a 22-year-old member of the Spirit Lake Dakota tribe living in Fargo, North Dakota, who was 8 months pregnant when she disappeared on August 19th in 2017. Her body was discovered in the Red River 8 days later. She was kidnapped and killed by her upstairs neighbors who wanted her unborn baby. They cut the baby out of her before they killed her. Her baby survived and is now with Savannah's longtime boyfriend and father of the child. Savannah's Act, introduced by Senator Murkowski of Alaska, was introduced in 2019. The bill would allow the Department of Justice to review, revise, and develop law enforcement and justice protocols to address missing and murdered American Indians. It passed the Senate in March of 2020 and was tabled in the House on September 21st and is currently waiting to be discussed. The Navajo Nation reservation lies in portions of New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. It's over 27,000 square miles and is larger than 10 of the 50 states in the US. Yet it only has 210 officers and 28 criminal investigators. There are 1.9 officers per 1,000 residents, and each officer is responsible for 70 square mile section of the reservation. In 2008, the Navajo Nation reported 6,100 violent crimes, including murders, aggravated assaults, prostitution, child abuse, molestation, and sex offenses. Rape was the most frequently reported violent crime on the reservation. There were 300 rapes, or an average of 6 per week. In 2013, the FBI cited the Navajo Nation as one of the most dangerous reservations in the US, with more rapes occurring on the reservation than in multiple populous US cities. The Navajo Nation now issues what's called turquoise alerts when tribal members go missing. The overwhelming majority of missing tribal members on Turquoise Alert Facebook page are women and girls. Ashlyn Mike was an 11-year-old Navajo girl from Lower Fruitland, New Mexico on the res. She was kidnapped, raped, and killed by a 28-year-old Navajo man, Tom Begay, in 2016. One of the instances where the perpetrator was Native. Ashlyn's 9-year-old brother, Ian Mike, was also kidnapped, but he was released unharmed, in quotes, and found wandering on a road on the reservation several hours after he and Ashlyn disappeared. Ashlyn's body was discovered in the desert outside of Shiprock, New Mexico. Ashlyn's kidnapping and murder prompted the US federal government in the state of New Mexico to finally work with the Navajo tribe to get the Amber Alerts implemented on the reservation, something the tribe had been trying to do since the late 1990s. The Cheyenne River Sioux tribe is located in central South Dakota. It encompasses about 4,300 square miles and is roughly the size of the state of Connecticut, with a population of over 8,000. It currently has 19 tribal law enforcement officers, 17 police officers, 2 lieutenants, as well as around 60, I don't know why it keeps doing that, 60 administrative support personnel for the entire res. The tribe also has 4 working ambulances and 1 reservation to service the res. According to the US Department of Justice's Bureau of Crime Statistics, In 2016, there were 229 violent crimes on the reservation, including 4 cases of rape, 2 robberies, and 223 cases of aggravated assault. According to tribal members, the rates are actually higher, and the victims are usually, or most often, women and girls. In the early 2000s, 5 in 10 Cheyenne River Sioux girls contemplated suicide, while 1 in 10 actually attempted it. Sexual abuse, neglect, poverty, and hopelessness are often cited as reasons for the high rates of suicide contemplation and attempts. There is a National Day of Awareness for Missing, Murdered, and Indigenous Women, May 5th, both in the US and in Canada. A Senate resolution to designate May 5th as this day was introduced in 2019 by Senator Steve Dines. The original resolution was first drafted in 2016 in memory of Hannah Harris, the photo here, the Northern Cheyenne woman who was murdered in July of 2013. The day on which the original resolution was introduced, Roy Lynn Ride's horse, a Crow woman, passed away after being beaten, burned, and left to die in a field. One of the things you'll see today is a red handprint. This has become synonymous with the Missing, Murdered, Indigenous Women and Girls movement. You'll particularly see the red hand over someone's face. And in Canada, they started what's called the Red Dress Project. First started in 2015 by Jamie Black, a Métis artist. She wanted to draw attention to the close to 4,000 Indigenous women who had disappeared. So 600 red dresses have been hung across Canada as a visual reminder of these missing Indigenous women and girls. The practice is also taken off here in the US. You'll see red dress hanging in certain places for this reason. And throughout Indian country, people are bringing attention to this issue however and wherever they can. Jordyn Marie brings 3 white horses. Daniel, a Lakota and Dene woman, ran the 2019 Boston Marathon in honor of the missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls. She ran with the symbols on her legs and the red handprint over her mouth. And the well-known Choctaw artist, Stephen Paul Judd, designed a t-shirt to raise money for this issue. If you go on social media, Etsy, places like that, you will find lots of Native artists doing beadwork, paintings, drawings, stickers, whatever, to raise money and awareness for this issue. Even Hollywood got on the bandwagon back in 2017 with the film Wind River. The film's about the rape and murder of a young Indian woman on a reservation in Wyoming. While this film was not based on a true story, it drew from many of the realities surrounding this movement and the issues. Natural resource extraction, man camps, and law enforcement and jurisdictional issues. Over the past year or two, the movement has expanded to include what many people refer to or call two-spirited individuals, Native peoples whose gender identity or sexual orientation and preference does not conform with Western binary male-female identification systems. Many American Indian cultures and societies were traditionally more accepting of people who did not fit the binary categories. Lakota had Wingte, Navajos had Nadlihi. Chris.
Sure, hi, I'm Chris Daley. I just wanted to focus for a couple of minutes, and I really want to get to Jordyn and River talking to give you a more personal perspective on a lot of this, but I wanted to talk for a moment about what can be done. You know, as you listen to all of the stories and read the data, it gets very, very depressing, and it is. But the reality is we need to not focus on that negative. We need to focus on the positive. We need to focus on what we can do about this. And as a professor in the new College of Health here at Lehigh, I have to talk about data. This is for my colleagues. We all talk about data. But one of the problems here is that the data are missing. We don't know enough. The numbers that we've cited are there. We don't really know if they're correct. We don't know what the accuracy level is. We need to get out there and get the data, because there's nothing we can do until we have the whole story to present. Everybody knows that in order to make things happen, we need to document everything. And so we need to create the data. We need to find out really what's going on and talk to the people who are living through it every day. So I would urge any of you in research, if you have any interest in this, please get involved and start to create the appropriate databases and start to learn the stories so that we can make things happen. For anybody out there, spreading awareness and educating is really important. You know, this is an epidemic and it is happening right now and it is never on the news. We need to make people aware of what is going on, and anybody can do that. Share things through social media or just talk to people. Creating that awareness can then help us to force policy change. You know, we have some policies in the works, but more needs to be done. We need to have stronger policies, and we need to have the ability for reservations to be able to take care of things and to work effectively to get things done. The other thing people can do is don't support the man camps. Don't support the natural resource extraction that creates the man camps. Stop this at its core so that that sort of thing doesn't happen anymore. Sean, can you go to the next slide? Because I don't have control. But locally, let's talk locally for a minute. First of all, Monday, October 12th, coming up, is National Indigenous Peoples Day, formerly known as and still known as Columbus Day in some places. Indigenous Peoples Day is not recognized by the state of Pennsylvania currently. I am hopeful that will change, but currently it is not. I encourage everyone to support National Indigenous Peoples Day. Wear red, show your support of ending this epidemic. Share the facts about this issue on your social media. Use October 12th as a day to start this. November, for those of you who don't know, is Native American Heritage Month in the United States. Keep your eyes open for some virtual events here at Lehigh. We do plan some. Share facts about this issue and other Native issues on your social media throughout the month of November. Get the information out there. And you know what? Do something for yourself and learn something about Native people. Maybe learn something about the Native people in the area you're from if you're not here in Pennsylvania with us. And finally, on May 5th, 2021, every year on May 5th, wear red. Show your support of ending the epidemic and help us as we are out there. We will try to decorate Lehigh's campus with red dresses. I would encourage any students who will hopefully be on campus this spring, hang red dresses in your windows. Let's get them up around campus. Let's make people aware of what's going on. And that's a way to start. At this point, I would say let's stop sharing. Oh, actually, is there one more slide?
Just our contact.
Just our contact information. So there's our contact information. I would say let's turn it over to River and Jordyn, who can talk a little bit about what it's like growing up on a reservation and what it's like for Native women and girls. And it looks like Jordyn has her daughter Journey with her as well. So maybe we'll get to meet her. So do you want to stop the share, Sean, and so we can see people? Thanks. Jordyn, River, does one of you want to start?
Greetings, everyone. My name is River Gunville. Allow me to introduce myself in my Lakota language. Haumadakyapi, Tante Washte, Nape Chuzapi, Nagi Kazapawi and Machiapi Kishto, Na Mini Koju Lakota, Na Wakpa Washte Imataha. So, like I said, good morning, good afternoon. My name is River Gunville. I work as a research scientist here at the Institute for Indigenous Studies, which is pending. And I grew up on, a little bit about me, I grew up on the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Reservation located in Eagle Butte, South Dakota. Like Sean mentioned, it's really a big reservation, roughly the size of Connecticut, really rural. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience or just growing up as a Native woman and being targeted, because as Indigenous women, we are very vulnerable. We are over-sexualized and dehumanized, especially by mainstream media. And And I believe that our voices as Indigenous women are powerful. Many times our voices as Native women are silenced, and we're always fighting to be seen and to be heard. And I feel like events like this are important because they help bring awareness and education. They create visibility and allows for the opportunity for us to use our voice as Native women to talk about these issues that we face. Because these are issues that we face on a daily basis, whether it's happening to us, to our sisters, to our mothers, our daughters, our nieces, our cousins, and sometimes even our brothers, our men. And like Sean mentioned, we don't have the laws or the policies to protect us, or even just enough law enforcement to patrol the vast areas of the lands on the reservations. And oftentimes when women do report something, it's often thrown out or used, sometimes can be used against them as victim blaming. So I think it's so important for us to voice these concerns in the community so that the community and the Lehigh community can step in and help us in any way that you want to, or a way that you're able to. So yeah.
I'm sure we'll have some questions for you later.
Jordyn, you wanna?
We'll let Jordyn go, and then we'll take questions.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jordyn Gunville, and this is my daughter, Daley, who is joining us today. And I am, me and River grew up together. As she mentioned, on the Shannon River Sioux Indian Reservation, and that's located in central South Dakota. And so I just over broadly wanted to just kind of give some context to kind of what we're talking about in terms of those social contexts that I think can kind of help paint the picture to kind of why this issue is so big. So a lot of our reservations are very under-resourced in terms of access to different resources that that individuals may have off reservation, such as access to transportation. So for example, or even cell phone service. So as I mentioned, our reservation is equivalent to the size of Connecticut. So a good example, my mom, who's an educator, always uses it. I like it, so I'm going to use it. She'll say her students will be bused almost 2 hours to school, go to school, and be bused back home 2 hours. So because of the lack of access to transportation, often people do have to walk to our tribal headquarters to get some of those essential services, like see the doctor. And so, and that's kind of a similar situation for most reservations up here in the Northern Plains area. Also, the man camps, as I mentioned, they are also placed in those really rural areas, and there's no service. So I think, one of our huge barriers is access to law enforcement, because as you see in the statistics, we don't have a lot of units patrolling, and those individuals who are patrolling are dealing with either other issues. We have a lot of car accidents that happen, so they'll need to go to different situations where if there's a search that needs to be happened, there's not a lot of manpower, I guess. So it can be challenging at times. And also, are we up here in this area where you see in Canada and up in the Northern Plains, kind of the northern area where the statistics seem to be higher? We have harsh winters that also make it really difficult. I know a few winters ago, there was an individual missing, and they had to wait until they could get out into areas because of the snowstorm. So there's just a lot of different barriers. Also with winter, we access, plowing roads. So there's a lot of confounding factors that are contributing or influencing the stark disparities for us.
Okay. Actually, before I take questions, I saw one of our colleagues on the line from back in Kansas, who I just met, IM'd, and she said she'd like to say something. We have a colleague of ours, Christina Haswood. She's a Dene woman or Navajo woman. She's also a House rep, a recently elected House rep in the state of Kansas. So Christina, there you are. I see you now. You want to add to this conversation? Because I know you definitely have experience with this issue.
Dr. Sean Daley, for inviting me to speak. I am a candidate for the Kansas House of Representatives in District 10 here back in Kansas. I've done some work with the urban area, and in the state legislature, we have 4 federally recognized tribes in Kansas, and trying to address this issue as well. There was a previous bill in the Kansas legislature, a Missing More Indigenous Women's bill, that ended up dying in committee. But I hope there's going to be some plans for that to be reintroduced. And if so, I'm so ready to be a part of that solution as well. I know I want to also work on in the state legislature on bringing this issue to the urban environment, because in my district we have Haskell Nations University, and that brings a lot of tribal people all into one place. And you know, this issue is all across our country, all the way up to Canada. And I think legislation and policy and politics plays a big role in it. And there's a lot of avenues for solution. Maybe it's for training our police forces and our highway patrols and sheriffs across the state, but as well as the local level too. Here in the city of Lawrence, when we had our sheriff's race, it was a big education opportunity for these local level officials who have a say in our criminal justice system, and who can catch these warning signs. So definitely, thank you so much for doing this presentation. This is an extremely important topic today, and thank you.
Thanks, Christina, I appreciate it. There's actually a famous case out of the Kansas City area that I probably should have put in to the presentation, considering our ties to Kansas and Kansas City. Lakota Ray Renville. It's back in 2005. She was a Sisseton Wahpeton 22-year-old woman from South Dakota. She moved to Kansas City after she met her boyfriend online, and she kind of disappeared. They believe she was a victim of sex trafficking and forced prostitution. If I'm remembering correctly, 2 years later, they found her body wrapped in a carpet in Independence, Missouri, in a trash pile. And again, no one ever figured out what happened, who did this. And as Christina said, there are certain cities, urban areas throughout the United States where this is a significant issue. Omaha, Nebraska, Seattle, Washington, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Tucson, Arizona. A lot of these cities that are major traffic ways, highways, where I hate to say it, somebody could get thrown into a car and disappear very quickly. That I-35 corridor and I-29 corridors that run through Kansas City, middle of the country, those are hot spots where, you know, this becomes an issue. One of the questions that just came through is from Megan, and she said, "Could we talk a little bit more about man camps? Do these pertain to fracking sites?" River, Jordyn, Chris, do one of you guys want to handle that, or you want me? River, why don't you say something? I'll throw you under the bus because of what your sister did. Where was she? What's the name of that town in North Dakota where there was the man camp where she went to school?
If Jordyn wants to speak a little bit about that, because I know she had a little bit more knowledge about that than I did.
Okay, Jordyn?
Okay, so the question is, can you talk a little bit more about the man camps, and does this pertain to the fracking site?
Yeah.
So a good example, like Sean had mentioned, was Williston, North Dakota. So that's kind of a central area where a lot of the fracking is happening, where it's a large business town. So those individuals who live there, actually my sister was a school teacher there in an area there. And it was really hard because they were getting overpopulated so fast. in terms of like their hospital census was crazy. Their school, they had a lot of families moving in for work. And so these areas were being overpopulated. And so it's a really small town which had city-like traffic, and it became really dangerous because a lot of the so you know, you make a lot of money on not only on the oil field, but the shifts are, I think you work either 1 week or 2 weeks on, and then you have that time off. So they would just kind of stay up and party, and so they would party in that central area. And I think a lot of that area is populated by native lands and native communities, where that our people tend to be the bystander of these individuals who are then moving into these areas for work purposes. I hope that answered your question. But they're really dangerous. I remember Chloe telling us stories, or our grandma having to tell her, don't go out past midnight. I mean, and then even their dorms. So she played college ball up there, and they would have to lock the students in their dorms for their safety, and just really had to educate these young individuals who are going to school there, and even adults. It wasn't just young women, it was older adults as well that were, being kind of victimized by these man camps or this fracking.
And there's also going to be, well, not going to be, but there's also like talk of a pipeline being built on like the kind of like the border of the Cheyenne River Reservation. And if that does happen, there will be man camps put in place. So that will directly affect women in our community. So this definitely hits home, and this hits home for a lot of people, because these aren't just cases, these aren't just things that we talk about. These are actual Native women with families, with daughters, with people who care about them, love them, and they're still missing. So I like to just take this moment and, have you reminder that, keep these women in your mind, in your prayers, and remember that although they're out of sight, they're not out of mind, and that we still are seeking justice for them through policies and through bringing awareness through presentations like this, and really highlighting the issue and the epidemic that's happening to our Native women.
And I also have one more thing to add, sorry. So Christina Haswood, who's one of our colleagues, talked a little bit about how she's doing advocating through policy and working with different authorities to kind of bridge this gap. So I also wanted to kind of why that's so important for those of you who may not be familiar with reservations. So reservations, we have sovereignty over our land. So so for example, we talk about tribal police. You've probably seen it on the PowerPoint. So that jurisdiction is ran by our tribal government or our tribal nations. So it varies by each reservation. So between where me and River live, we have reservations surrounding us, and their jurisdictions or their judicial systems may be different. And so that's why it's really important that we make those policies with outside, like Christina said, with those highway patrols who do pass through our highways through the reservation, but that we can develop some continuity in kind of these processes and these protocols when it does happen efficient. So I know that each reservation is different, but I just kind of wanted to put a disclaimer out there that we are sovereign of our land. So the way each tribal government is run varies from each tribe.
Yeah, that actually ties really nicely into another question in the chat, and I don't know if you meant for it to do that or not, but it did. And that is from Carrie, and it says, there's a lot of conversation currently about defunding the police in non-tribal cities. Are there ways that diverting funds from city police forces or state law enforcement could provide financial support for community safety systems that help improve the safety of Indigenous women? And are there any positive models for what this could look like? Unfortunately and fortunately, you're dealing with sovereign nations. And so the funds can't really be diverted when you have state-funded or locally funded police forces or anything like that. They can't just be diverted because you're dealing with a sovereign nation. And a lot of funding is from the nation within itself, or in some cases through the federal government. So it doesn't really, there aren't any models to follow because you can't divert from one to the other because you're dealing with nation within a nation status, which any federally recognized tribe does enjoy. So, sovereignty is a wonderful thing, and it's very, very important. It also allows people to control their own police forces, but at the same time, then you can't talk about diverting funds. So there have to be ways to take funds from the federal level and bring them to tribes, or find other pockets of funding to bring into the tribes. It can't really be done quite as simply as diversion of funds. I hope that's a very quick discussion of how sovereignty would work in that instance, but it's a much more complex issue because of nation within a nation status. Sean, did you want to say anything else about that before I?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then we have from Faith, how does one who is not involved but taking the steps to become knowledgeable become involved, and where do we start? Anyone want to take that?
I can.
Okay.
So hi, Faith. Thanks for asking that question. I think that it just with any Native or Indigenous issue, it's always the first go-to is to kind of ask how to get involved. So we appreciate that. But I think just you can contact us at our center here at Lehigh, and we'd be glad to. And then just kind of like being aware and understanding kind of those differences, and this isn't just a reservation issue. It's also, like Sean and Christina mentioned, it's happening on reservation as well. And just kind of understanding those red lines that we face as Indigenous people trying to help. There's so many things that we have to make sure we're addressing to get this solved, whether it's addressing the data issue around it, whether it's getting the right policies that are going to benefit our population and our communities. So we'd be happy if you reach out to the center to definitely have a more conversation about this.
I'd also add to that, definitely look at the social media out there. Social media is really a movement right now because it's not getting the attention through mainstream media or other platforms. This is really a social media movement. The other thing I would say is certain tribes are really working their tails off to get infrastructure set up at the tribal level. I know the Navajo Nation has pulled together a department to handle this up in South Dakota. I think it's called the Lakota Law Project. River, is that the name of it? I think you found their website when you were looking on this. So certain states are really getting involved, particularly tribes in certain states. And again, most of what you're finding is social media. There's not a lot of brick and mortar, places where you can find out about this. And again, even the literature, the academic literature, things like that, it's very, very sparse. There's an Indian publication called Indian Country Today. They're online. They used to be a newspaper, but they're online now. They'll have stories about things going on as well. So again, right now it's the digital age. That's where a lot of this is happening, and you can start to learn more and figure out how you can get involved through a lot of these sites. Because when someone goes missing, they'll be the places that put out a call for people to come and do searches and things like that. We had a question from Megan. Does the underreporting of these cases have to do with anything with reservation sovereignty? Do these reservations have their own police? Megan, yeah, all reservations have their own police. They may not be a large police force. They may be inadequately funded and lack resources, but every reservation has police. I don't think sovereignty directly has anything to play into the underreporting. I think if anything, it's the lack of positive relationships between tribal police and outside police force. A lot of these communities are surrounded by what we call border towns, literally towns bordering the reservation. And some of these border towns are not overly friendly to Native people. And they're the first people you're going to go to if a tribal member is missing, a border town. And they don't always play well. I'm going to be honest with you. Even having lived in one in Arizona for a while. The relationship between tribes and border towns can get problematic. And then with the multi-layers of jurisdiction, sometimes non-tribal police, it's a struggle to get them involved. The way jurisdiction works, after a tribe, it should be kicked to the FBI or US Marshals. But again, looking at how much actually gets reported to law enforcement, how much law enforcement at the federal level chooses to investigate, it's very rare, I'm sorry to say.
And I think, I mean, just to be blunt about it, I think racism and discrimination and sort of institutionalized racism has a lot to do with this. You know, that portrayal of Native women as being a certain way and the over-sexualization and commodification of Native women and their culture really makes an impact. And so, you know, when someone says, you know, this Native woman has gone missing, there are these ideas about alcoholism and what's going on with her. And, you know, that becomes pervasive and it really does have an impact. Unfortunately, there is still in 2020 quite a bit of racism out there. And Native people face a lot of it, particularly in states where there are large Native populations and you have lots of reservations with all of these border towns. And I think that impacts what's going on with Native women and girls as well. I don't know, River or Jordyn, if you want to jump in on that. Jordyn, you're muted. Welcome to Zoom.
Jordyn has 2 kids with her.
Oh, now she has 2. She's got 3 of them.
I saw a baby Jay run by before, who's not a baby anymore.
Yeah,
so.
She's got 3, and let me tell you, Jordyn makes very beautiful children. So are there other questions? Does anyone else on the panel want to say anything? Are we ending early? That's unusual for us.
Yeah, I know, really.
If there are, oh wait, there seem to be. I just saw the last one. Yes, we would love donations of red dresses before May. And they can be sent to, I guess the best thing to do would be to send them to the College of Health care of one of us. And we will get them. And we would love donations of red dresses. We really would like to make Lehigh look full of red dresses in May to really help get the word out. Yeah, and thanks for talking about the border towns. That's what I was thinking in my, okay, defunding and diverting funding question. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Oh, thank you for putting in the University Events has put our College of Health address in there, and it's a mailing address. So if anybody has donations, we would love that to get the red dresses out there. We promise we will put them up, yep, put them 100%. To good use. So thank you. Are there any other questions?
Tom McAndrew. Really, Tom? If you had a dream data set, what would it look like and what would it include?
Let's hear it. Let's hear
it. Tom, it would include big data. We talk about big data all the time in the College of Health. Honestly, I want to know where these women are, who they are, more demographic variables about them, and how they're going missing. So knowing, you know, are we talking about people by the man camps? Are we talking about sex trafficking? Sort of what's going on there? So including a lot of different information about the demographics of not just the women, but also of the cities where they are, the towns, and some of that sort of information. Does anyone, Sean, River, Jordyn, would you add?
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things, we know it's a problem. We know it's a huge problem, but beyond that, we don't know much. Like Chris said, these women are going missing. They're going missing in crazy amounts of numbers. And, you know, we're guessing it has to do with sex trafficking. We're guessing it has to do with forced prostitution, things like that. But honestly, we don't know.
You know, I mean, if I'm going to talk dream data set, I want some social isolation scales to find out the level of social social isolation of women and of people in communities where this is happening. I'd want to understand a little bit more about networking, social networks, and to understand how we can impact those social networks to make sure that women are not lost. You know, when you have someone who is fully connected to a lot of different people, you can stop some of these kinds of things from happening. So I would want more information on that to really understand those networks and how we can impact them to make sure women are missed immediately. Because when you miss someone immediately, you can find them. If it goes a few days, the trail goes cold, and any detective will tell you that. So that's what I would want to see, is that immediate way to impact.
I also think, you know, understanding more about the family, because in our community, that kinship, you know, we have such a close kinship with our families and our extended families. And I think that is such an important component, that a lot of these women, they do have those close ties to their family, but yet they're still missing and they're still being murdered. So I think that from a tribal aspect, that's going to be one of the variables that is really going to be important in terms of those influencing those policies, and then you know, just kind of make how do we address this issue?
Are there any documentaries? I'm not, Sean, do you know of documentaries? I really recommend the film Wind River, even though it's not a documentary. I think it really showcases the issue.
There's one that just came out. I've not seen it yet. I think it's called Missing Sisters. I want to say it's out of Canada, and it just came out. Yeah, Margaret, I would do a quick Google search on documentaries pertaining to this. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it's called Missing Sisters, and it just came out within the past few months. But again, I haven't seen it. The film Chris just mentioned, Wind River, that would be the film. Again, Hollywood film, but gets at the heart of some of what's going on. University Media, can we do a plug for Indigenous trivia tomorrow night? Yes, this will be ending on a good note. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, we are doing Indigenous Peoples Trivia Night. It's meant to be fun, lighthearted, have some questions about Native peoples from the Americas. We have some prizes to give out if you do well. We have some Native.
We'll mail them to you.
We'll mail them to you. We have some Native t-shirts. We have a Native fleece blanket. We have some beaded earrings. Nothing fancy, but definitely fun little things. So yeah, we have some people signed up already, but trivia night, we could always use more. So we are just about out of time. Thank you, River, Jordyn, Chris. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Christina, for chipping in and let me put you on the spot. So yeah, thank you. Let us know if you have any questions. Do our best to answer them.
Thank you everybody for taking
Thanks,
the time
everyone.
here for this.